Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Ultimate Effort Show with Alex.
And Joe.
And today, you probably discerned through your intellect and reason and observation that we have a very special guest on our show today, Lon Prater. And Lon, you are one of the OG, I think I'm correct on this, one of the
Ooh,
original
yeah,
Runehammer guys. I looked. I think you were back in the Google Plus community, right?
absolutely, yeah.
Yep. So
Not,
from
not as early as some, but yeah. So my first exposure was the Drunkens and Dragons videos, and they
Mhm.
were just lit my brain on fire. Even though I wasn't playing D&D at the time, I was kind of playing a lot of Fate Accelerated and trying to cobble together a group. Those ideas and concepts and just the that energy in those videos. It pulled me in. And so when the that first edition came out, oh yeah, I was at that point I was all in. Everywhere that there was an ICRPG to be found on the internet,
Yep.
I was plugged in. And so by I think that was 2016, I think, was the Drunkens and Dragons videos that got really got a lot of popularity. And then by
Yep.
February, that was I was running my first ICRPG game, and it became
Yep.
pretty much the only system I'm running nowadays.
Well, that's what I figured. So, at least I thought at least early 2017 when ICRPG came out, probably even before that. So you are one of the beginning ICRPG guys. I remember seeing you from way back when. I wasn't sure
Yeah.
if you'd predated the forums, which came out around fall of 2018. But yeah, I was pretty sure I
Yep.
remembered you back in the Google Plus days, back in the old Hangout. So you've been
Yep.
around forever in ICRPG. You're active on the Discord. You've been a part of the community. You are also published author.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
that
And
happened once
yep,
or
and
Right.
twice.
yeah, maybe a few
We
times.
know these
Yeah,
secrets.
we're gonna dive into some of that. We want to talk about that, and showcase you. And I know you've been involved in the hobby for a really long time. I think you
Mhm.
have a really awesome, unique perspective in terms of gaming that we really want to
Yes.
share. So if you're cool, we'll just dive in, and
Yeah, let's
and
do
you
it.
and you may be aware, maybe not, that we have a tradition here on the Ultimate Effort Show, which is we want to know everybody's origin story. How did you get
Yes.
started? How did you first get exposed to gaming? Man, we can't wait to hear all about it. Walk us through it.
All right,
Yes.
so 1982. I'm already dating myself right here.
Nice.
So there's this period where, not to put too fine a point on it, but my dad and my mom had split, and my dad basically decided to get as far away from her as he could get without getting closer again. And he'd moved to the Philippines. And he was in civil service on the base there. And
Okay.
so uh, I wasn't happy with the situation that I was in, staying with my mom and my brother. And so I decided I wanted to go live with my dad in the Philippines. And heaven and earth was moved. I had to speak to judges and all this stuff at 10 years old. And
Wow.
when push came to shove, my dad said, international travel is expensive. You can bring only one suitcase, and it wasn't even a big suitcase.
Wow.
So all my toys were left behind, most of my clothes, pretty much everything I owned, except for some underwear and a stack of comic books like this. And
The essentials.
yeah, but and I didn't realize this until like a whole lot of years later. But that created in me this sense of lost childhood. Um, and so when I got to the Philippines, no friends, and new school year, I ended up just kind of falling in with a bunch of guys that were playing D&D, this brand new thing with blue boxes and red boxes. And then it was, we're blowing money at the Navy Exchange the second anything from TSR came there. We got the Star Frontiers, the Top Secret, Boot Hill. I mean, just all of the Gamma World, the early edition with the bunny rabbits in it. That great bunny rabbit art. So started playing there, and none of us knew what we were doing. but we just had a hell of a lot of fun. And about 5 years later, I had to leave, and that was tough. We left. That we were like two, maybe three of the modules into the Dragonlance, which was the hot new thing. And the subscription model, and and so for a long time, that really has been, the campaign that got away. We played so many things, but when I left, came back to the States, 11th grade, new school. I'm a little bit of a different person too by this point, and sure. I found a couple gaming friends, but the gaming was like just few and far between, and I mean, but to give it to its credit, it was a lot of Palladium Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles when we were gaming. So I mean, that crap was awesome. There's nothing better than sitting there rolling the dice and looking on the tables and finding out how many mandibles your parrot has.
Yes. I still have that delicious book back on the shelf over here somewhere.
Oh, it's a lot of fun, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I love it.
That's great. Well, so man, it's awesome. So you started in D&D, went on to Palladium and other systems. Did you play other games? Like, have you had a very broad experience in terms of like taking us from there in terms of your timeline?
So what actually ended up happening, I joined the Navy at 17. My dad couldn't sign the papers fast enough to say he agreed that I should join the Navy at 17.
Oh, wow.
I was in boot camp 3 days after high school graduation, and that began a long dry spell for me. I was up till then, I'd played those systems and a few others. I spent a lot of time wishing I was playing every ad in the Dragon magazine. I was like, oh, the Morrow Project, I want to try that. Oh, Psyworld, I want to try that. Especially Psyworld. I've kind of got a nosebleed psychic fetish thing going on, but we won't talk about that.
Awesome. Yeah, this is not that kind of show, folks.
Right. Okay.
Right.
We gotta lower the temperature.
Right.
We won't go full scanners, but we might get close.
Yeah, no, man, that's epic.
So I joined the Navy in '89, and I went into the nuclear power field. I really wanted to go into intelligence, and I tested too well and all this other stuff. So the recruiter wouldn't talk to me about anything but nuclear power. So that was an intense academic. It was the first time I was really challenged academically, honestly, and it was a tough dynamic because I wasn't the smartest guy in the room anymore. And I was just being, baffled by some of the concepts that other people are throwing around with ease. So I had to devote a ton of time to studies, and I would watch, and I saw this slow change on the ship and in the break rooms and stuff. It went from being D&D players to Magic players, and I wasn't interested in that. So I was like, okay, well, I'm not missing out on anything.
Right. Can I
interject? Personal computer.
Can I interject just real fast? Hold that thought. I want to make sure that I get this right. You served in the reactor room of the USS Enterprise, for folks who don't know.
That is correct.
I mean,
that's why I had to rock out with my Spock out.
There's all kinds
long
of
and prosper.
Yes, fun connotations to that, but literally,
right next to the transporters.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly.
Hello, right. Computer.
Sorry. Go ahead. So a lot of people were playing Magic,
and I was a red shirt technically because I was in the nuclear engineering power plants.
But a red shirt that survived, so that's like up into the Scotty levels. I mean, pretty epic.
Epic.
King of the hill of the engineers.
Man, well, thank you for your service. But so take us back. So a lot of people were playing Magic at that time, and then personal computers had started to come out. Take us from there.
Well, that became my gaming outlet, and that's really where I tried to recapture that gaming group that I had from 8th grade to 11th grade in the Philippines. It was such a special time to be a gamer and just to be alive and to be in that group and so on. So I would play all the computer role playing games that I could find. The Fallouts and the Pool of Radiance when it would run and things like that. All that good stuff. And that even, that pretty much progressed all the way up into like Morrowind. And when that game came out, that just blew my socks off as a gamer who was only getting my fix through computer role-playing games. So at a certain point, my personal life had a collapse, and my marriage was ending, and I had been writing again, or started writing in 2003-ish, I think. Maybe 2001 actually was when I started the writing. But in somewhere, 2006 or so, my marriage is ending, and I'm decided, it's time that I started getting more involved in the writing community and going to conventions more instead of just writing and sending stuff off to try and sell it. Let me go meet people. My God, I have a tribe. Going to the first conventions. I was in New England at the time, so I was going up to ReaderCon and BosCon, and there are a few others that we kind of would travel to here and there, but I was hooked. Let's see, Arizia, I think, was another one up in that area, and so it was like, these are my people. And then I started to see how many of my people are grown adults who are still playing the actual games at a table, and I was so damn jealous. I was, whoa, how are they doing this? Why have I been missing out on this for all this time?
Oh man, that's epic.
And so I started looking at what was available, and things had changed a lot since that big fat DMG with the freak model on it, or the statue and the jewel eyes and all that good stuff. Yeah. So I gradually got my feet wet. I found that because of all the stuff I'd done with writing, and I'd been studying story structure theory and everything, and I said, I kind of dig this whole narrative gaming piece. Mm-hmm. And so I did a little bit of a deep dive with several systems, and was mostly just reading without playing anything. Mm-hmm. 2011, I retired and from the Navy, and we moved down here to Pensacola. I had been in Dayton, which also has some great conventions, about an hour to 2 hours in any direction you go. Not much was happening in Dayton at the time I was there. Yeah. And so I just started to, after the retirement, I was looking for community. Actually, that's a goal that I set for myself. I moved like more than 35 times before I was 35. Oh my gosh. So my life is,
Brett, I've my fair share of moving all over the place.
Yeah. And so that sense of no stability and no rootedness, and giving up your friends every couple years or less, that I was ready to be done with that. And I came to Pensacola in my retirement with the stated goal is I'm going to build my own community in some way. I don't know what that means, but so it started with writers. And so, I kind of, hey, where's all the sci-fi, fantasy, horror writer geeks in this area, and started attending. And then I ended up running a meetup for a while. And from that, I kind of got back into gaming with Ingress, and that broadened my community quite a bit. It's for those who don't know, it's what Pokemon Go was before, it was the first iteration of that kind of technology and game. Very team driven in real life, doing stuff on your phone and in places, trying not to look like you're up to something.
Right. Gotcha. Trying not to look shady.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we can thank Pokemon Go for making it to where, like, pretty much everybody who's just walking around like this and stumbling into stuff is probably, that's like normal behavior now, right?
Right.
Oh yeah. Right. That's the default. I mean, people who are paying attention they're the weirdos.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Right? Well, so, okay. So I'm curious, I may cut Joe off here, but I am curious, when did you first start DMing?
Ooh.
I DM'd a few times during that 1982 to 7 zone. I really tried hard to DM Boot Hill. I loved the Western thing at that time. Now I'm more of a weird Western. But I spent more time as a player during that time, and I think that the other people in my group were happier for it, honestly. So when I started to DM again, probably 2014, 2013, somewhere in that zone, I had collected enough friends from the Ingress world and the writing world and their spouses and people that, just to kind of come into my life that were into the gaming and in the board gaming also. That had kind of been picking up during that same time frame for me. Mm-hmm. So I said, I'm going to try it. And let me memorize the smallest rule book possible. And that was Fate Accelerated at that time. I didn't know about the real rules light systems out there. And, like here's a half a page with 12 syllables on it. Go.
Right.
But I thought, Fate Accelerated, I can get this. And so started running several different games. We ran this weird King Arthur scenario where there was a little bit of an alien invasion in the background of a King Arthur thing, and it was a lot of fun. But that system, much as I love the narrative, conceptual, abstract stuff of it, it was not crunchy enough for most of the people that I was playing with, but they were happy to game. They were starving for it as much as I was. But great. That kind of set the stage. It was a lot of Fate stuff. I didn't want to get involved in anything. I knew I didn't want to get involved in anything that was very heavy, crunchy. I can only run 32 feet. I can't run 35 feet. So I guess my turn's done. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, right.
Was
right.
Which I love it in a board game, in a strategy board game. But when I'm at a table with friends doing role-playing games, we're telling a story together. We're creating an experience together. Mm-hmm. And that's a little bit different than the headspace of how can I interpret these rules to make a victory of whatever that means.
Right.
So that kind of really, the pump was primed when I saw those the Drunkens and Dragons videos. I was like, I have found the exact thing that is going to work for me, and it's modular enough because I'm a fiddler. I will twist and tweak every rule that you have.
Me too.
Just for this one session, because that's the thing that makes it fun. How do you tailor it in the modularity of ICRPG and modularity and brilliance, honestly. That really there was something about the elegance of the streamlined mechanics and the philosophy, even, and I'm a big I work as a therapist and I love neuroscience stuff. And so when our benefactor, Mr. Furrenale, would get on about how, when you have to do the negative math to take away stuff, it not only sucks out the dopamine, but it creates extra cognitive load.
Yes.
And I was like, oh.
He was speaking your language, wasn't he?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I could not have found a better gaming guru if I'd, started waving money around at people and asking them, to help me.
Yeah.
And those are all definitely tools that, obviously helped with the storytelling. But speaking of that storytelling, and you had briefly touched on it, I kind of want to jump back about 10 years here and talk about some of this storytelling, because I'm over here on LONPRATER.com. And
I've heard of that site. You're the only one that's visited in a long time, but
no, not true.
I've kind of been looking stuff up since because I did get graciously, you sent me a couple of your books, and I loved them. I was like, holy shit, I'm in games with this dude. Why did he never? It was like a big secret when I found out. I was like, wow, like look at all this stuff, and I've got it up on my phone over here. You've got quite the bibliography.
For folks who are listening or watching, Lon Prater is kind of a big deal in the hobby and in the writing community. Yeah, he is. He absolutely is. And that's why he's in this coveted spot of being one of our first guests on the show, because he's awesome. Mm-hmm. And we've been in games with him.
I'm humbled. Thank you.
Well, you're an awesome fella, and we're glad to showcase you. But go ahead, Joe.
Yeah. No, I'm just bringing up. We've got a good handful here of novels and loads of published short fiction, and a lot of it has been into that horror side. And I actually I wish I could have found the article There was one that had you listed with a few others as kind of one of like those, torchbearers of the Cthulhian mythos kind of in our modern day, which I really should have searched a little harder because it was a great article that had a name drop for you. But I mean, with some of these, you've even shared pages in a book with like the likes of Neil Gaiman, which I know there's a lot of people that are going to recognize that name. Well, recognize this name too, Lon Prater. He's in here.
Yep.
And I believe that one was in the, oh man, what was it? The new Cthulhu.
Let me do a little product placement.
Yeah, let's do it.
There we go.
Yes,
the
new Cthulhu.
Yeah,
Recent
so-
weird.
And
Yes.
you'll see. While I may be a big deal, it's under my pen name, Manny Moore.
No,
Yes.
but well, well, let's read the title too, because some folks will be listening to this on the podcast. They won't be watching the video. So,
Yep.
Lon is holding up
It is
New
New
Cthulhu.
Cthulhu, the recent weird,
Yes, and it's an
edited by
anthology.
Paula Duran.
Yeah, it is an anthology of horror short stories, horror short fiction, correct? And Lon is prominently featured in that, and I think that book has won several awards as well. So that's a big
I know
deal,
that
man.
it received a lot of positive feedback and recommendations. Now I'll show you because Joe's asking about the beginnings.
Yes.
So this is the paperback version of the first place my work appeared.
Yes.
From the Borderlands, Stories of Terror and Madness. The Borderlands series, if you're not familiar with it, is a fantastic outlet run by Thomas Monteleone and his wife Elizabeth, co-editing during the time that I was involved. They would routinely throw up these books and walk home with Stoker Awards, and that also happened for this. In the time between the hardcover edition and the paperback being released under a different title, added the "from the" instead of just Borderlands #4. The book won the Stoker. Stephen King's story, Stationary Bike, is the one that appears in here, and that got a lot of attention. And there's just a ton of writers who are great enough to have their name there. But once again, one of my other my other pen name here's Ann Duthers. So Annie Moore and Ann Duthers are my favorite pen names because I did a lot more short fiction than long fiction.
Well,
and
but
that's what. That's where I sat, and I was happy to sit there.
Well, I wonder how many other people can say that they're in a published anthology with Stephen King and Neil Gaiman and others. Right. I wonder how many other people can say that. So, truthfully, folks, when I say that Lon Prater is a big deal, he's a big deal. And we're lucky to have him and to have gamed with him and to I consider Lon a friend. I want to talk a little bit about like we're going to get ultimately to a certain game that we were in. A horror-ish game.
Oh, okay. Right. But yeah. But that was a doozy.
That was a doozy. Yes, I want to talk about that too. But
but real quick, before we leave the writing stuff, you also were now correct me if I'm wrong. I believe you were an editor or helped edit with Dissident Whispers.
I did. I was one of many volunteers that donated their time to help with proofreading and editing. And a lot of different I think I ended up doing proofreads on 4 or 5 of the main pieces in there. And it was the right time, and it was a great cause. The Dissonant Whispers existed to provide bail for people who were being unfairly persecuted for Black Lives Matter protesting.
Yeah, this was all through 2020.
I felt strongly about that. I wanted to do something to be a part of it, and I said, "Wow, here's a place where my gaming and my writing can cross over." Which we haven't talked about how the writing at the tail end as much, but I kind of started to let it go, and this was a little bit of a renaissance, I guess, into thinking about doing more publishing type stuff.
Yeah, because this was Dissident Whispers for folks that aren't familiar. Dissident Whispers was a 1-page RPG adventure in support of Black Lives Matter, which had 58 original 1-page adventure rules and stuff, and that was an awesome project.
Gorgeously laid out too. If you haven't seen the inside of this volume, you really you owe it to yourself. There's so much in there that's usable.
Right?
That's great.
And Alon, I do have to tell you, I purposely avoided the end or the fall off of the writing because I don't believe it's finished. No matter what you say, sir, I have faith that there's going to be more.
You know,
it was a season, and the season is turned. And guess what? Sometimes seasons come back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I want to hear about? I want to hear about Alamo Rising. Tell me about Alamo Rising. What is it?
I would have the book.
I have that one actually here. I wondered if that was a thing that would be talked about. So
I have been searching. Like we're still. I moved beginning of the year. We've been slowly unpacking, and I've got another box of books somewhere, and that's one of the books in it. I was hoping to have that sitting behind me here. The Alamo Rising.
Yep.
And the soundtrack was also dope.
Tell everybody about Alamo Rising.
The soundtrack was awesome. So one of my favorite writers that has kind of stayed at the level where I am to a large degree of lots of really well-regarded short fiction and getting lots of notice. And I think at one time when my ego really counted, it really mattered that I could count. Oh, look, I've been listed on year's best fantasy and horror lists, this many times now or whatever. And so, and I admit to a little vanity there. That was such a great feeling to know that not only am I doing something and it occasionally pays a car payment, but people like it.
Yeah.
So Josh is a friend that I met through an online writing group that was kind of limited access to a few people that were at the same level, what we were calling neo pros at the time. And I can't remember whether I sent him or he sent me the opening of a short story. And that short story turned into, it's like, you mind if I write on a little bit on that? That was just really cool. And so whichever one of us had started it said, sure. And we started passing it back and forth thinking, well, this will be a great short story. And then this will be a great novelette. This will be a great novella. Okay, we've got to figure out what we're going to do with this damn thing because it keeps going and going and going.
Right.
And so we spent about a year, and he lives in Austin, keeps part of the force is keeping it weird. And I would visit for some of my trips for the military. I had a reason to visit the area around San Antonio. And so I spent some time doing that research there. But I tell you, for people who have been to San Antonio and seen the Alamo, what's there is just a tiny little piece of the chapel. And they'll say, hey, if you look over there where the Ripley's Believe It or Not mirror maze is, that's where Travis wrote the letter and so on. And it's underwhelming there, but what wasn't underwhelming was it took a little road trip for myself. It feels like about 50 miles out into the middle of Texas, nowhere, to the site where they film the Alamo movie and Lonesome Dove, and just it's a recreated Texas shooting site for westerns. And I spent the day just hanging out and soaking it up and absorbing it, and came back from that with this new energy. And so by a year into it, we finished writing it and editing it, and the people that we knew loved it. We shopped it around. It came like that close to getting picked up by Tor. I think it was Tor. Wow. It might have been Bain. No, it wasn't Bain. I'm pretty sure it was Tor that we were this close. And
wow.
When that didn't end up happening, we had a small press offer that we'd been kind of, holding on the back burner in case if Tor called, of course we're going to go there, and we didn't want to jeopardize that with the first rights. Yeah. So that publisher did a lot of really cool stuff with Alamo Rising to get it set up, and it's I believe still available as an audiobook. And so part of the marketing, though, here in Pensacola, there's a steampunk musician who I knew and enjoyed his company, and we would always geek out about things. So whenever we would get together with writing and so on, Escape the Clouds is the name that he does music under.
Awesome.
And he decided that it was worth his time and a little bit of our money to put together an EP inspired by Alamo Rising after he had read it. Yes. And that is such a cool. He's playing with there's pieces of it. He's playing with a bass ukulele, an electric bass ukulele. And if you haven't seen one of these things, it's like someone took an O-ring and just stretched it out, and that's the strings on this ukulele. And it's,
oh, that's
it
crazy.
Is the greatest. And a lot of digital post production. Created the publisher took a piece of that music and made a really cool video for it, and it came out with not a splash, but maybe a plink. We had our opening was at World Fantasy Convention. I can't remember the year, maybe 15 or 16, whichever year it was in San Antonio. Mm-hmm. And awesome. So that was a great event to go there and to launch a book 20 minutes from the actual Alamo, based on the Alamo, but also zombies and shape-shifting Comanche, and that steampunk crew from the Queens colony in California.
Yes.
Well, that's just it. And I want people to know, like, the descriptors that I have. I've not read it, sadly, but the descriptors that I have for Alamo Rising is that, it is a zombie steampunk Western. Is that an accurate description, Lon, of what readers can expect?
I've read it,
but it's also a touching story of a father and a son finding redemption.
Awesome. Yep. Awesome. Yep. That's killer.
And it's, I'm sure there's more, but for me, that's one of 2 books I know of that have a soundtrack that were made for it, that were written along with it there.
Yeah.
The only other one was Mark Danielowski's House of Leaves. His sister, artist Poe, wrote a CD that was a soundtrack accompaniment to it. But yours was like, I dig that. I dig it, man. I'm not gonna lie, I had that thing playing on repeat as I was reading, and I was like, this is heaven. It fit. It was really great. I really enjoyed the book. I really, really did.
I love hearing that. Thank you. Well, and by the way, in case it hasn't been mentioned, Joe's no slouch when it comes to the pen himself. So, I've really enjoyed reading the things in your collection.
I'm all slouched. Look at these rounded shoulders.
With tails, I think. I might be botching the title, but I'm really close.
No, that's dead on.
Yep, that was tails, it. Yeah. Well, so I want to circle. Yeah. So go check out Lon, buy his stuff. Mm-hmm. Number 1. Number 2, you should check out Joe's stuff too. Joe's awesome. We are going to feature Joe at some point, but I feel like as the host, and since today is all about you, Lon, we want to make it all about you.
Exactly.
So let's
carefully responds to my attempt at deflection. Got it.
Well, you're so gracious to give Joe a plug, but let's circle back to you.
I'm still blushing, man.
And what I'm curious about is your DM style. And one of the things that I've learned from you, Lon, is that I think you put a post on the Runehammer forums about the 3 types of gamers. And I love anytime people categorize stuff. Like, I love buckets and compartmentalizing information. And your sort of take is there are gamists. There are people out there in the hobby who sort of, they enjoy that sort of rolling dice and that rules and that sort of piece of fun. And then there are narrativists, people who enjoy more of the story crafting side of it. And then you have the simulationists, the folks out there, who are, counting like drops of sweat and how long you can keep your armor on and, how frequently you have to go to the bathroom and that sort of stuff. Yeah. I'm being a bit reductive. So shame on me. Shame on me.
Shame.
But I think it's fair to say, I mean, it's probably no secret, I'm in the gamist camp, but I think you fall more into the narrativist side of the hobby. Is that
when it comes to role-playing games?
Yeah, is that accurate? And walk us through a little bit in terms of how that impacts your DM style.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, first, I can't claim credit for that set of ideas. It has been around a while. The division of gamists, narrativists, and simulationists. That might not be the name that they use, but that's kind of how I've interpreted the concept. And actually now I'd even add a fourth category that wasn't there, and that's the good time. The person who's just looking to have fun with their friends. Nice. And if this is how my friends are having fun, this is how I'm doing it. And so I'd say there's that hidden fourth camp that's been with us all along.
They're just ubiquitous. It doesn't matter what camp you're in, they just enjoy it.
Right? They just want to hang with their buddies.
Yeah.
And that's cool too.
Yep, but go ahead.
So and those ideas are just extremely well suited for index card RPG because of the modularity that it allows you as a DM. So at any one of my tables, and I've had tables with 9, maybe even 11 once, just for certain events and so on. And
you're a crazy
talk
person.
About herding cats. It was a ton of fun, but oh my God, I don't know if I'd do it again soon.
Yeah.
But so when you have that many people with that many different styles, and so side part, I had a little period where I played a lot of Texas Hold'em, and I was never really as good at playing the cards as I was at playing the table. So those skills of reading the table really translate into what I'm about to talk about for breaking down ICRPG into those styles. So you can tell easily which friend is a rivet counter and which friend is there because they want everyone to know their 700-page backstory, and which friend is there because they want to make sure that they win all the things without losing a single hit point. And so it's people who are driven by a need for accomplishment, driven by a need for having their story be heard and shared, and people who have that drive for the reality of it. They want to experience another world. Mm-hmm. And the earliest D&D stuff was a lot more simulationist just because of the origins and so on. Mm-hmm. But at a given table with ICRPG, there's a piece of loot to give out. Let's just go easy. There's a sword. The narrativist is going to be the one that gets the sword. Okay, so this is a sword that, and then I have to stop and think, if I'm doing it on the fly rather than kind of prepping, what is this person, what's their story, and what do they want their story to be? Well, they're out there trying to be sneaky and sly, and they've been using other people, kind of, the player gets a thrill out of persuading NPCs to do stuff for them, maybe. So one way to handle this would be, well, the sword has a little bit of a personality. It is not talking to you, because I would have a hard time running that myself, I think, but you get senses of strong emotion from it. And then I would probably give them, follow the lead with them a little bit as that type of player wants to discover. Mm-hmm. And for the narrativist, it's a lot about discovery. They want to discover, what does the sword do? Well, I don't know what it does, but I'm going to read the player as we go, and I will, I would narrow it down until probably by the end of that session or the next session. Now I can write it. Now I can say, this is a really cool thing to do with this sword. And it makes sense based on all the back and forth that we've had. We've built it into this over time. Totally satisfies the narrative player to do a piece of loot that way.
It's beautiful.
You got your gamist. So they're looking for, min-max, they're looking for combos, they're looking for, for power gaming elements. And so,
ouch, I feel targeted here.
No. There's nothing wrong with that style of gaming.
I'm not quite that strong on the spectrum, but yes. I want to know, what does it do? Does it do a cool thing? Does it have a synergy with my existing loot?
Is it Red Sword?
Yeah, right. Or is it Red Fang? Right.
Or Red Fang?
Yeah, that's 55 on the loot table, by the way, just in case anybody needs to know that, because I love that sword. But yeah, so I want to know all those properties. Yep, but go ahead.
Yeah. So with that gamist player, it's going to be about providing an interesting, even sometimes intricate set of parameters that make this the best choice. And so it's about, here's your limitation. Here's the roped off sea that you're going to get to swim in when this sword is just going to be kicking ass. Yeah. And here's exactly how much it kicks ass. And I look for what inside that parameter, what can it be that how can it amplify what you already got going on, or just totally nerf your weakness in that moment, but only within that roped off sea. And so that type of loot takes a little bit of preparation ahead of time.
Yeah.
Because you gotta know the player. It's harder to improvise that type of loot on the fly. Yeah. But it can be done, and sometimes it can be done with smaller pieces of incidental. And there happens to be a bag full of cockroach parts in the corner of the room. Well, that if your gamist player grabs it, you're probably going to need to come up with something cool to do with it, or something cool that it could do. Yeah. And throw that into the mix.
Well, I will say, one of the good things about ICRPG, right, is that the loot table kind of does some of that lift. The loot tables do some of that lift for you, right, to satisfy that crowd. But anyway, I hope folks are paying attention to this, because Lon is holding a DM master class here. Like, I have goosebumps. Go ahead. I'm literally hanging on every word.
Okay. Well, no pressure.
Now that I've said that, let's hope you can get the plane down, because right now we're cruising. So let's see the landing.
We'll see if we can stick the landing.
Yep. So you can bring it in.
Just kill some geese and land in the river, right?
Yep. Right. Yeah. Right.
So for a simulationist, what is it that drives the simulationist? A lot of times it is that it is as realistic as possible. Mm-hmm. So realism comes with its costs, but more important than that, it comes with its details. Yeah. And so you think about, what are the details that most appeal to a simulationist? They're the ones who they're into their accounting. They're into,
counting
how many of my arrows can I pick back up after this combat? Well, since you ran like a little child, maybe none, but so you take for the simulationists, they're going to want some degree of, they enjoy the bookkeeping more than other types of gamers do in general. So creating a sense of scarcity with the bookkeeping, scarcity plus detail equals realism.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And so what could we have that sword do in that moment? So how about for the scarcity piece, we would go that it only has 3 uses of its most important use, and there's 3 gems. One's green, one's red, one's blue. They're all glowing right now.
That's epic.
Don't know what that means exactly to the player, but this is one where you need to do a little bit of prep probably. Yep. But as they investigate it and try to figure out what it does, and then it comes up in combat, the thing that it does. So once in this life of this sword, the red gem will self-activate, and that creates an expectation. And maybe it self-activates versus the undead, and bursts into flame. You've got a flaming sword of plus 90 against the undead, whatever it might be. The scarcity thing is, they see that gem goes out. Now they're counting, but they have an expectation of, well, the other ones are going to do something like that, but they don't have to. And that's the other piece of realism is not consistent. We talk about, in computer stuff, they talk about that uncanny valley. If the simulation looks too much like a human, we can tell, and it's weird.
Yeah, it's wrong.
Yeah.
Well,
even if subconsciously something's wrong.
Well, I think he just greased the landing, because that's just pretty epic. So I think where I want to go now is, is number one. I guess I need to ask, with that backdrop, is it the case that you have players of all three styles at your table right now? Because I know, like, here in a little bit, you're going to run your Mirkwood game.
Yeah.
You have players of all three styles. I think that's amazing, and it's a really good point for our audience, in terms of how you cater to all of those different styles. Honestly, I don't know that I've seen anybody maybe more adept in terms of what you do at the table. That being said, I'm very curious, Lon, because you've had this background in writing. How do you handle horror at the table? And how do
I handle what? You broke up a little bit.
I'm sorry. How do you handle horror at the table? And how do you feed that experience? Yeah.
Right. And real quick, I just want to add, you did, on the Runehammer forums, you wrote this brilliant little series of kind of posts about horror gaming, Lon on horror gaming. There's first, second, and third crucial elements. I'm going to point those out so folks can check that out as well as hearing it from themselves.
That's outstanding. But I think I'd love to hear, like, if you were to try to give people a practical set of steps in terms of emulating what you do at the table to run a horror type game and give people that sort of horror experience, what advice would you have?
Well, and we were talking about this a little bit the other day. The very first piece is to realize what is horror. And it's the sensation that comes from the absence of safety. Well, what does safety mean? What does it mean? And at the end of the day is, how confident are you that what you know is accurate and that you can control the world around you to get the results that you want? So certainty and control are the opposite of horror. And if you look at anything in horror anywhere, it's about the fast or slow loss of control and loss of certainty. And from that root, you can build any kind of horror game. I think the next big piece that I'd throw in there is the fast or slow part. And this is part of where tone comes in. Some people, they want to just, pop zombies, headshot zombies all day and laugh about it. Nothing wrong with that. That's a lot of fun. Some people want or prefer that creeping horror of something that should not have happened the way it just happened. And I don't know why. And I'm in danger.
Right? Humans don't.
And I can't tell why I'm in danger.
Yeah. What was that, Joe?
Yeah. Humans don't stack books like that.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's epic. So how then, in terms of what you do, your practice, what do you do then to bring those things to life at the table? Because, dude, I've seen your setup. You posted a ton of pictures on the Runehammer forums. You posted a ton of pictures in the Discord. That awesome table. Every time I see that blue tablecloth, like, I know some awesomeness is happening.
I love my blue table.
Yeah, dude, it's killer. Right. What are you doing as the DM then to potentially facilitate those experiences?
So, it starts off with the idea of art and creativity must have constraints. And that's awful high-minded and abstract. So boiling it down.
Wow.
I have to ask, what is it I'm really trying to create in this scenario? Am I trying to create terror? The oh my God, I need to run screaming from this? Am I trying to create that creeping sense of dread? And am I trying to create gross out horror, or all three? And there's other, tons of other flavors, but first off, I narrow it down to the main flavor.
Gotcha.
You know, what kind of scary is this going to be?
Awesome.
And from that, yeah, I mostly play table games. I love the Runehammer VTT. But if I don't have to play online, I'm probably not going to a lot of the times. I enjoy it when I do. But you know, I love a table game so much.
Yeah.
So
let's just pick one. Let's just say you're going to do like Creeping Dread, and you want to instill that experience. Are you going to use maps? Are you going to use images? Are you going to use like, you know, are you going to have a ton of flavorful NPCs? Are you run that theater of the mind? Or are you going to, you know, drop a book on your table or jump up? Or are you going to go stand behind a player? Like what, you know, kind of breathe and whisper in their ear chillingly? Like what are you going to do?
Those are all things that I wouldn't put past me.
That's awesome.
I think I just exposed your playbook, but go ahead.
So what the examples you just showed really point to are to create an emotion at the table in a character. It's easier to create the sensation in the player that goes closely with it.
Mm-hmm.
So that idea, what you're talking about, the looming behind them. So if I wanted to create dread in the character, I would try to create the bodily and mental stuff that goes along with that in the player at the table. So sometimes it's simply choosing when to break the scene. Mm-hmm. And the person walks in, you can see that they have a set of bloody tin snips in their hand and something tissuey hanging out of their mouth. And it's your turn, Jeff.
Right? Cut, jump.
What's happening back at the antique store?
Oh,
right. Just leave them sweating for a minute.
You got me again.
Right. Well, because that's a beautiful thing, because that suddenly puts all of it on them. You're off with the other player at the antique store, and their wheels are spinning. Okay, what's up with the tin snips? What's hanging out of their mouth? And they're kind of doing it to themselves at that point from those prompts. That's a beautiful, beautiful little, I guess, trick you could say, or tool in the toolbox to kind of help spur that feeling of dread.
So similar to that, dropping a loud book, any sudden loud startling sound, whether it's just your face hole making it during narration or suddenly going,
yep,
right, that's going to get everybody's attention, even the one that was looking at their phone sneakily under the table, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when you do that, the body feels that startlement. Mm-hmm. And when you immediately pull in some compelling visual, they associate the startled body feel with the visual that you created in their head. And this goes back to some of that neuro stuff. You know, they've done studies of people watching their brain as they read about how to ride a bicycle, or watch a video of someone riding a bicycle, or, you know, just listening to someone talk about how to ride a bicycle. And some of the same parts of the brain, kind of like how when we're sleeping, you know, that the same parts of the brain light up as if they were riding a bicycle, with the exception of it stops right before, same as in REM sleep for most people, that thing that keeps us from, you know, choking the clown to death, or whatever, you know, physical action we might do, the paralysis, that we're limited from actually engaging it, but all the rest of our mind is doing the thing. And this comes back into fiction too, you know, writing fiction, presenting things in an order that hits the psyche in the right way.
Yeah. Yes. That's
so
awesome. Well,
there's a sensation.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go. There's a barbershop. Barbershops generally aren't thought of as a horrific setting, but with the right music and the right lighting,
in the right
maybe
century,
they can be. So you know, and adjusting lights and having colored LED stuff has been a big piece of my table style. And also, careful selection of music and when I have it, or sound effects, to create that mood. But so we're in a barbershop, and I can do, if it's a happy-go-lucky scene, then I'm going to be talking about smiling faces and the smell of the aftershave when the barber slaps it on, the dust, the chalk dust floating in the air from the talcum, whatever.
Yep.
A lot of sunlight pouring in through the windows. But no, this is a horror. So, there's all the polished steel is so sharp, and he's dragging that razor across the man's neck. And the man has a wild look in his eyes, like he's not sure if this is the right decision for him. Outside, the pole is twirling.
Yeah.
There's a red line. There's a blue line too, but they don't need to hear about that. They picture that. But by what I choose to include, I focus their attention. There's a red line spinning in a spiral.
Line.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. That's
So
brutal.
sudden sharp squeal of the air brakes on a bus.
Yeah.
Well, I was just saying, in case folks haven't figured out, Lon is a super fun DM. Like I think the people who get to play at your table are super lucky, because intellectually you're crunching all this stuff, but then you're really putting in a ton of forethought and thinking into how to best present the mood and the tone and these moments for your players.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be at sometimes probably theatrical level experience, I would think. But I want to shift gears.
It scratches a lot of the writing itch.
Yeah.
It really does.
That's awesome. Well, I want to shift gears here a little bit too. Because you have run some really great games. One of the ones I want to focus on is you ran a Scooby-Doo game, which just tickles me.
Scooby-Doo versus Ash and the Evil Dead.
Yeah, thank you. Which just tickles me to death. Tell us a little bit about that game. I think people would love to hear about it, because you had a ton of awesome images, and I think you had some props and stuff like that at the table. I want to hear all about it, man. So
for that session, what I set out to do was just to make a creepy, spooky, fun scenario. And this was, I had this world-spanning mega campaign in my first year in ICRPG. And, it started off in Alfheim, and then we did some other sessions here, floating around all the other places you can in Alfheim. Actually, technically, it started on the Red Sword. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah, and so there came a point where I was just doing some one shots, and a thing I like to do is I like to time the game around what's really going on outside where I'm at. As not every time, but often. So, I knew that I was going to be hitting this three one shots that were going to all be happening somewhere around, late August, October timeframe. And so I wanted to do stuff that was horror themed, but more modern. And I wanted the tone to shift around. I honestly kind of inspired by the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The same characters in different shows have very different tones. Mm-hmm. And so wanted to do Scooby, and because I love Scooby. As a kid, that was my favorite. And so I kind of dug around, and I said, I want to make this a lot simpler than the already very simple, ICRPG to get. So I boiled the stats down to stuff like, looking for clues and running away and stuff like that. And I created this other piece where each player had a gift. And the gift was, just a simple Benny, a tag, or whatever you would want to call it, that was really related to one of the characters. And went online, and I was just looking up art, classic scenes, and I found a few that worked. And I I was content at that point. Okay, what could be more creepy than a museum? And also a big haunted house on the hill near it. So, right. But wait, we need some dark and creepy woods. So I had those environments ready to go. And then it was about figuring out what's going on. And so I went back and I watched a bunch of Scooby-Doo because I loved having a good excuse to do that.
Epic.
And I saw the chattering teeth and all of the sight gags. And I was like, for this game to feel Scooby, we've got to have sight gags. And so I went up to the Party City and the Hobby Lobby and the Joann's and just scoured the clearance racks, found little sandwiches and actual set of the chattering teeth, an umbrella, a little plastic skateboard that would be in any kind of kid's birthday party, gift takeaway bag. Yep. And so I had a handful of cool props. I spent 15 minutes writing a tagline of what mechanic, gave them each a mechanic that I thought that they could do. And then I knew that I would be open to whatever the players wanted to do with it too. So start throwing these items out as they discover them throughout the scenario. And you would not believe, you would believe, but it was so much fun. Epic. To see the childish delight of having toys to play with at the table and then being able to, actually set the chattering teeth going and send it chasing after, the bad guy or whatever. So awesome. I knew there that I had a lot of fun stuff going on. I was like, I need something else. I want there to be a tonal shift, but I couldn't figure out what it was at first. I said, it can't all be silly because I want it to lead into this is the island of light mood in the midst of some dark times. And so I wanted that they had a pretty rough scenario, pretty grim before, and it's going to get darker again. But this is that, moment of light and respite.
Right. The pressure release.
Yeah. And so I wanted this to end a little bit darker. And so okay, so what do we really have? Somebody's missing, and like in every Scooby-Doo, somebody's missing. They're probably going to have a mask on, but maybe not. And so I started thinking about, well, who was missing? Ash, or Ashley at the time was just the name. But then I thought, well, wait, how fun would it be for them to be looking for Ashley, not knowing that Ashley is a male and is Ash from the Evil Dead? And so this is another piece of the fun side of the horror discovery element. Yeah. Creating the opportunity for the players to figure out something on their own, dropping enough big clues that at the right moment, when it hits, the player having their own aha moment beats the living pants off of anything that you as a DM are going to write, read your little text box of, and then the realization grips you. Yeah, no. Right. Create the opportunity for the player to experience the aha. And when they had that aha, Ash,
click.
Then immediately said, "There's going to be some evil freaking, the Evil Dead around here." They immediately started looking,
cabin in the woods. yeah.
Which is where a big chunk of the finale of the game played out.
Oh, that's
now that they knew to look for the cabin in the woods, and that's when and I leaned harder into the Evil Dead 2, where there was a whole lot more obvious physical comedy of the hand and the gore and all that.
Yes. Yeah.
But so that piece really is, I'll say that defines a lot of my table style overall. When you're deciding what to prep, and this is VTT as well, mm-hmm. you can have what people want. What feels good as a player, as an audience, as a DM is a sense of consistency. But in the real world, we have a hard time getting as much of it as we want. So we got to focus. And it's like, consistency of visual style.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
That's a good one. Consistency of abstraction level.
Mm-hmm.
That's important. You know, if a player is like, okay, well, here's this question mark I drew on an index card, and it's sitting next to the most detailed mini replica, that's ever been constructed. There's a mismatch of abstraction level, and that shifts things up. So consistent visual style, consistent abstraction level, and then and it's one of those things where, here's 3 things, pick 2, because nobody's got, if you have time to make all 3 of them great, you're spending too much time prepping. And so that last piece is a consistency of emotional arc, which I think is probably one of the most important pieces. So when I say visual style, to contrast that with emotional arc, Hankering's got a very obvious visual style.
Yes.
Yeah.
That stuff sticks together. It works together.
Well,
if you were to look at any 5 pictures from a Call of Cthulhu book, you would say that even if they're 5 different artists, they all have the same emotional, tonal, approach. And so those are the 3. It's like consistent visual style, abstraction level, and mood, I guess is probably the best word there.
Well, that's
emotional
great.
mood.
Well, I mean,
2 and focus on them.
Well, yeah, I mean, I will say, we've noticed that for sure in our multi crew games, which is Joe, Xander, Chuck, Dennis, and me, and we ran several years ago. We ran the Demon Land saga that had a certain tone and a certain look, and a certain visual style and a certain emotional arc. Very, very sort of serious game in many ways. Very touching game. Yeah. Contrast that to our Goblins of Thrushum game, where we're all
got to
like,
be a part of that.
I know you did.
Toot.
Where we're all like sort of imbeciles, right, on a bit of a romp, and that has a different look and a different feel and a different emotional.
I like to call them accidental heroes.
Yeah, they are for sure accidental heroes. But that point was really driven home to us because we kept saying, what fun, we really appreciate those games that are touching too, but what fun we were having was sort of that Goblins game, because it was a little bit of the zany, like you were talking about with the Scooby-Doo, and kind of let your hair down, and what a great time that game is at the table. I think all for the reasons you were describing.
That's a big part of, there's a contract that the table has. It's a set of expectations, and this is a harder thing when you're playing with strangers over the internet or showing up for an Adventurers League game or something. And the contract really is about what kind of game are we playing, and what that boils down to is what kind of story are we playing. And people cannot always come to the same place from the same words. If I said, hey, we're going to play a horror game with zombies, some people are going to be playing Zombieland or come in expecting Zombieland, but other people are going to come in expecting, like Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah. And then again, a whole third section, some people might be expecting, World War Z, that kind of new thing where they're fast and they sweep in like a flood of water almost. Like, there's very different takes all on that same thing. And that's very true that sometimes without directly spelling it, everybody's going to have their own vision of what that actually means.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
And I talked about this some in those articles, the LON on horror. The emotional expectation is a part of the genre.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
The having fun, popping headshots, and woohooing at each other as you're kicking zombies in the teeth. Right. That is one emotional arc, and another is, oh no, somebody we care about might have just been bitten. What are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
And so having the players on the same page at the beginning in terms of big picture, what kind of emotional arc Is this Van Helsing or Buffy the Vampire Slayer?
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It
Yes.
makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Huge difference. Two of my favorite pieces of fiction, by the way. Um, so I'm curious. So I want to circle back because you mentioned using props at the table, Lon, and maybe you can help me out here. I have always been afraid to use props at the table for this reason. I mean, I have used them in the past, but to me, that headspace in terms of the fiction, right? Like you're really engrossed in a good novel. To me, that is always sort of my polar star. Like I want players fully immersed and their head sort of in the moment, like, oh, what is happening to these characters? Da 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 da. And my fear is that sometimes, perhaps, if you introduce a physical prop at the table, that you then take players out of that headspace and now you jar them sort of maybe back into the real world in terms of what is now in front of them that might be sort of different maybe than the fiction. I'd be curious, and that's my personal hangup and my personal fear.
Mm-hmm.
I would be curious what your experience has been in terms of using props, because I know you do that often, and sort of how you maybe bridge that gap, if there even is one.
It's usually it's a less is more. That Scooby game was an exception. And if I'm going to introduce something to the table that is its own distraction, as a physical artifact rather than an index card that I printed something on, or even tried to draw, then at that point, it's got to be worth what it's bringing. And that the first piece is, it is the thing that I'm trying to represent physically at the table important enough to get all this extra attention.
Epic.
So, being very circumspect, and you know what, I'll be honest, I have drawers full of potential props that mostly are unused. And before games, I sit there and fiddle with them, and I rule out. I have the fun sweep and like, okay, this would be cool. This would be cool. Oh, and you know what? There might be a picnic table. So, but at the end of that, when I've had the fun of exploring the idea and what it could be, I really have to take that editor's razor and just start cutting stuff out. That's not really that important. That's not really that important. What can hang the attention of the whole game on? And so maybe for most games, 2 to 3 would be the high end, but 1 or 0 is the most common for me for most of the games.
That's cool. I think that's really.
I want to say one more
advice.
thing though on that. And this has been a hard thing for me to get, but eventually it has sunk in 90% of the time. The trust the players piece. For one thing, I am not, my styles and preference, including cognitively and neurodivergency stuff, all of that is not the be all end all. And for me to say that the player must be fully engaged and immersed through the entire game, it's an artificial imposition that can sometimes cause more damage than good. And it creates it creates its own schism when I try to make somebody who likes vanilla, I sure they're going to eat the chocolate because that's what's at the table. But if I try to make them prefer chocolate, I'm messing up as a DM. And so it comes down to, trusting my ability to read, are they enjoying this moment, and tailor the experience to them rather than create a tailored experience that everyone must experience the same way up front. So ADD is a great example, and ADHD. The whole time we've been talking, I've been twisting this right here. I don't know what would happen if I untwisted it all the way. Besides, I'd probably make a mess of the whole desk here. But I have players who are fidgeters too.
Yeah.
And sometimes the fidgeting is rolling dice. Sometimes the fidgeting is drawing and doodling whatever is happening at the table. And sometimes the fidgeting is getting up to go get a snack or a bathroom, break frequently.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. That's on them. I trust the player to enjoy the experience the way that they want to experience it. And I have to trust myself to let them.
Yeah. Wow. I will say, man, Joe and Joe and I talk a lot about, trust and sort of that intangible and how important that is as a table and as a DM to trust your players and to really sort of foster those intangibles. Man, that's awesome to hear you say that. It feels very, very validating in terms of, our belief system as well.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because it is a big.
It works for a reason.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, so
exactly.
Lon, we have been talking now. It's hard to believe. Hour and 15 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
It feels like 5 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
Man,
so much fun.
Quick.
Time flies when you're having fun, right? So we have a few more questions that I do want to get through, and so typically the way I handled this last week or several weeks ago in the Hankering interview is I sort of did a lightning round. Would you be amenable to handling these in a lightning round format where
I would be amenable to being cut off when I can't handle it well.
Well, when we get your first blush reaction to some of these.
Okay.
So, first of all, what's been your favorite game as a player that you've played in?
The blacklight game that we were talking about at the beginning of this session.
All right, and I want to circle back to that. We'll save that to the end so people keep listening. I want to talk about that. All right, awesome. Your favorite game as a DM?
Ooh,
that you've run.
That's tough. I think I would have to say that one of my favorites. It's like your kids. You can't really pick a favorite. The one that comes to mind was a crisis point at the end of one of the Alfheim campaigns where I had kobolds coming on one side and the whole backstory, the players had interacted with them to some degree, and then we had the goblins on the other side, and so it was a battle of 5 armies, and at one of the standing stone areas in Alfheim, there was a balloon which one of a goblin merchant had been a traveling by hot air balloon salesman, and one of the players found their way into the balloon during the battle and was reading from the wrong book, and people were rolling natural 1s and natural 20s left and right. And it was such a great emotional closure, and it was kind of a moment of feeling like a virtuoso, and that I had so many mechanical pieces of the game held in my mind at the same time, and flipping from person to person, and that flow state, in the moment, working right at the peak of your abilities and talents, and time kind of fell away. But I love that game, and I think of it all the time.
You know what? Joe and I have not talked about that. We may on a future episode about being in the zone. And those sessions when you're in the zone and everything's flowing and the players are all in the zone and everybody walks away high-fiving, and what a great session. We haven't talked about that, but man, that's epic. All right. What's your one piece of DM advice to a new DM?
Get in there and try. At the end of the day, the table, whether it's virtual or physical, is the thing that matters. All the prep that you're doing is about keeping your ego safe from failure. Fail. Get in there and fail big, fail huge. And your players probably won't notice.
Really true. Really true. All right.
That's a great piece.
Yeah, that's brilliant. What's the one piece of advice you would give to a player if they're going to show up at the table? Like what would you tell a player?
There's a lot of stuff that's already out there that's really good. You know, Will Wheaton's law is always in effect.
Yeah.
Rule number one.
I think when it comes to how to help a player most enjoy being a player, that's the angle I'm gonna take on it.
Yep.
And if whether you're brand new or this is your 900th game, if you're going to enjoy this game, let this game be the only game you've ever played. Let go of those rememberies of the past and the expectations that you might have had, and what you saw on Stranger Things and whatever else. This is, and I talk, you know, I'm a practicing Buddhist, and I talk a lot about mandalas in my therapy practice and also in life. The idea of a mandala is that they are creating a beautiful piece of very intricate sand art that will be swept away in a day or so. Complete it, enjoy it, sweep it away. Live only in this game, in this moment.
Yeah. Beautiful. Love it. All right. What are you doing right now, game wise? What games are you running? Do you have a current group? What are you doing currently?
So I had this place where I was really kind of over fantasy a while back, and I was like, I need to play other stuff. So I played other stuff. And as soon as I was playing other stuff, I said, I really want to run the Darkening of Mirkwood with a modified ICRPG. And what a campaign. I'm the one, it's the first edition of the One Ring campaign book, and it spans 30 years. And so we're playing the heck out of that. We're about 7-8 years in, so you know, not very far into the 30 years and we talked about constraints and limitations earlier in terms of theme. To limit myself to the Tolkien-esque world, elves are this way, goblins are this way, the marshes, you know, are this way, and so on. And there aren't a bunch of crossbows on arms. There's not, you know, my half gnome, half tiefling illusionist monk, so on. Constraint creates room for creativity.
Yes.
And that also, you know, and I pull a lot of real media into my games a lot. So because it's an easy palette to dip from, if I say like so-and-so on Star Trek, everyone has a vision, and it's a shorthand that I no longer have to spend hours describing. And so, you know, carrying that idea forward into all the ways that it works that's the way I do it.
Okay.
That's nice.
And then finally, I would just say, what are your future endeavors? Hobby, RPG, what do you got going on in the future?
And I have one little ad on this future endeavors. Do these future endeavors possibly have more Broken Heartland in its bit?
Yeah. I you know what? So the biggest limitation for me when it comes to gaming, publishing gaming stuff and putting it out there is I'm kind of low tech. You know, Windows 95 is the last time I felt like I was really in control of what happened on a computer, and some of the stuff has just gotten away from me, and so I'm constantly making and creating and tweaking things here and there on index cards and Google documents and whatever else I can, but it never looks up to snuff for me. And so, you know, I end up saying, okay, well, you know, for one thing, going back to the not in a place of writing for money right now, even for the gaming stuff, whatever I make, I want to be able to put it out into the world and let other people use it without a lot of muss and fuss. And but I do want it to be at least, you know, reach a certain baseline of presentableness. You know, you can't have the poor relations standing next to this beautiful watercolor background page, you know, all of that stuff. So big way to answer that finally is I'm continuing to make stuff. And when I think something's useful and presentable, then I either put it out to the forum, or I put it in my folder, which there's links on the forum to my Google Docs folder, which has a lot of stuff that I've used for various games. And please, if there's something helpful, pick it up and use it.
Awesome.
I'd love to take Alamo Rising and create a source book for it, and
Cool.
and get that back into the world. And I have the blessing of Josh, my co-author there.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that'd
Yeah,
be epic.
so
That'd be epic.
Currently, what my goal is I am kind of keeping track of what works in my homebrew of the Darkening of Mirkwood. And so obviously the Tolkien estate and me do not want to have illegal battles. So I will be releasing something at some point that shows how I tweaked ICRPG to make a game that feels Tolkien-esque. And the name I'm working with is Dire Fellowship. And so that idea of it's a band of people facing a dark situation, and how to tailor the ICRPG rules to fit that.
Nice.
I didn't answer a single one of your lightning round questions fast, did I?
No, but you know what? This has been epic.
It was beautiful.
I want to switch now. I want to talk about, before we let you go, I know you've got your Mirkwood game coming up. We're at about 12:30 here, where I'm at 11:30 your time. I think your game starts here at noon.
At 1.
At 1. Okay,
yeah.
good. So you have time for lunch. But I do want to talk about this Blacklight game, because to me, and so folks know, Mark, who's on the forum, his tag is Shady Mother. He has written Blacklight, which is a ICRPG sort of take on Delta Green.
Yep.
And I think
it's fantastic.
It's fantastic.
Really good.
I think folks, some folks might assume maybe because you're making like agents or operatives or that sort of thing, that Delta Green, aka Blacklight, is sort of like an action game. But I think it would be fair to say it's probably more of a horror game. Although I think you could run it however you wanted, but Mark certainly ran it as a horror game. With some story beats. One was at an autopsy with somebody who was sort of flayed alive. The second was at a house where literally there was like jelly guts dripping from the ceiling. And then the third sort of story beat is we sort of track these creepy kids to a cemetery with a big mausoleum. And I think anytime you have sort of weird, creepy children, like, it gets crazy scary, and it was.
Yeah,
but
especially if you're one of those nuts, it's like, oh, there are kids in danger, I must go and throw myself in front of them. And no, the kids are the danger. Like that threw me for a big one.
It's like kids on bikes, but they're also like werewolf vampire creature things. But you and I shared a beautiful moment in that game. And that's what sort of stands out to me, because our friendship had existed before that game. We had played in several games together, DMing and running for each other, and then we were in this game, and suddenly we were in a situation where we were both possessed and out of our minds and trying to kill each other. And I'm going to let you sort of pick up in terms of your observations and what you thought, especially since you're sort of the horror guru here.
Yeah. So, and this gets to the root of what makes a lot of horror good horror as an audience experiencing it, and even more so as a player. Hard choices. When Joe's talking about those demonic kids that he wants to protect, but they don't want to be protected. They very much the opposite. That creates a hard moral choice. Moral for the player as much as for the character. And the idea of that, the consequences of that choice, when you're forced into it, the dilemma,
yes,
you must make a decision, and neither of them are good. That amplifies what we were talking about at the very beginning of loss of control. You must, or you will die. And so now you're no longer in full agency because of that lack of control. And that gets into what was going on with my character and Alex's character. And so we both there was a weapon. We're in a cramped mausoleum for a piece of it, and there's a thing that is overtaking our mind, and not just the thing that's overtaking our mind, but the absence of information, meaning that I have to interpret certain facts certain ways. His character's got a gun, and bad things are happening in my view in the moment. And so I had to restrict myself. No metagaming. Metagaming is very much the antithesis of a horror mood, even more so than in other types of gaming, I think. So I had to keep myself very much method actor in character. And, so what do I know? What would I do? And there was this moment where, and also let me just throw up, I know that Alex is not a big PvP guy, but in this moment, that is the most accurate, real thing that my character would do. So as the player, I talk through my motivations, what I'm aware of, and why, ending with that I'm gonna take the shot.
Yeah.
And I, in that moment, as a player and as a character, I was in that hard choices dilemma. I was horrified by what I was having to do.
Yes.
So not just the player or the character is going to have to shoot the partner, but me as the person. Oh, is Alex ever going to forgive me for this? And so I had to.
I haven't. No, I'm kidding. I clearly have.
Yeah, secretly this whole time I've had the doggy emoji thing over my face and just don't know it.
Well, man,
he's getting even.
I mean, you're dead on it. And my character, I think I came at you first. I think I had you against the ropes, and it was looking like my character, to my horror, was going to end up killing yours. And well, first of all, I failed the roll, which the mind control took effect. The artifact had it. I was in its thrall, and then I had to act in a way that goes against every fiber of my personal fiber and character, and against my character's fiber to turn on his teammate.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I had you against the ropes, and I failed my roll on maybe the coup de grace, and then you turned around and you ended up finishing me off, and it was. I mean, it was heavy, like at the table. And you and I both, I think we even had like an after action, like we had sort of
we had to process.
Yeah, we had a debrief because we were like, oh man, like that was pretty heavy right there. But it was epic.
Yeah.
It was epic.
All right, it's awesome. Yeah.
And one of the things that stands out about that session that we haven't talked as much about during this conversation is in that moment, I had to trust my fellow player. Yeah. And that's a hard thing to do if you've never played with someone before. It's a hard thing to do if you have played with someone before.
Yes.
Given certain choices.
Yes.
And there was a decision point of, am I going to do the right thing by this character's experience in the moment and roll hoping I miss, right, or am I gonna nerf this experience? Mm-hmm. And I went with trust. I trusted that the game would play out the way it was meant to, and everyone would be okay. Yeah. And it did, even though okay sometimes means that there's a lot of dead kids and teammates.
Mm-hmm. Right. But it was an epic sort of tale. I think the story played out exactly the way it needed to. Like, it's a game that we still talk about. And then that moment to me was such an epic moment. Not because we ended up in this PvP situation, just because we were both so fully immersed that it played out the way it needed to play out. It was pretty epic. So.
Yeah, and also, I can kind of relate with that. It was a cool moment to share with somebody, like with a friend, because I also played through that scenario. Chuck and I ended up in almost the exact same spot as you two, and Chuck Lemons, part of our Moldy Games, And same thing, after it was done, we had a little private, everything's good, man. Like, we're all good. Like, no sweat there. Like, I'm so glad it was you that shot me in the face, kind of a thing. Like, because we shared a bigger moment. It was one of those things, because we don't PvP often, and it was as deep and as epic as it was nice, like you'd said, it comes back to that trust. And it was nice that I could have that moment with somebody I trusted, that, we're going to kill each other right now, and it's going to be cool. We're still going to be great afterwards. Yeah. And we are. And likewise, we also still talk about it, because it was a cool moment.
That's the stuff that keeps us coming back to the table. And also it's the stuff that reminds us that the table is a microcosm of real life. Yep. And the lessons of the table translate into real life. Trust. Sometimes you have to make a hard decision and things are uncomfortable.
Yes.
Sometimes the dice just are not your friend.
Yep.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of back and forth between the experience of this transformative media of role-playing gaming and the reality that it is reflecting.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And I would just say, maybe to wrap that up, like to your point, you have to have that sort of dilemma. Players have to struggle with decisions or peril or drama, because otherwise we just simply don't care about their stories. And if we do have that drama, and if we do have that struggle, and we do have those dilemmas, then as readers, as consumers of fictions, as participants in this story-making endeavor, we really care. And that's what, to me, that's what just makes it awesome.
Yeah. Indeed. If I could, I feel like it's really important to throw one last piece on one more log on the horror bonfire.
I was going to ask you, like, do you have anything else you want to share with us?
The people at the table are real people.
Yeah. And
that means that they're coming to this game from a variety of different places in their life. Some of the people who are fans of horror are fans because they've already been through some shit. Mm-hmm. And this is a way of catharsis, or of reliving, or of fixing the past. Wow. They were at a place in their life where they had no control, and now they have control. Now they can change the way it ends. Now they can help when they couldn't help in a time in their past. They can be a part of the solution. And for those players, it's important to understand that that's where they're coming from. But there are other players who have been through some stuff, and it's not a joke to them. Yep. Throwing rape, or harming animals or something like that into a game, when that's a really serious thing to the person at the table. Yeah. without having an outlet, without having a vetting ahead of time and a conversation after, it's abuse. Yeah, it's abusive to the players. And there's a lot of macho out there of, we did this and that, and we just rubbed some dirt on it and walked it off, and how come you snowflakes can't blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, a person who feels like they're not bothered by a graphic description of rape is privileged. Yeah. They're really freaking lucky that they do not have the type of life to where just hearing about something skeeves them out. And so having something at your table in a horror game, the X card is a great tool. There are a lot of others, but a simple conversation, paying attention to the other people, whether you're the DM or a player in a horror game, noticing when somebody's mood has suddenly shifted, the temperature of the table isn't what it used to be, and calling that, I'll stop. Yep. Let's check in for a second. We're going to do a bio break, and people tell me what's up. If there's anything, you okay?
Exactly.
Yeah. Having the conversation and respecting the reality of a person's trauma to still live on with them. I think it's crucial.
Yep.
Oh yeah, big time.
I mean, I will say, generally those sorts of graphic, intense themes, I generally avoid them altogether. Might be one of the reasons why I don't run a lot of horror, because sometimes you can dip into some of those things, and I don't. I just steer clear of all those sort of themes if I can. That being said, to your point, every now and again you run across somebody who is terribly afraid of spiders, and you may think, well, I'm just going to run a simple encounter with some giant spiders, never realizing, that person at one point in their life may have been seriously traumatized by a spider because it ran across their face or whatever, and that sort of thing. So to your point, really paying attention to your players, an understanding, if their mood shifts, that it's your responsibility as the DM in the driver's seat to take care of those folks, ultimately, in terms of a matter of service, and then creating that safe place, another intangible where if somebody needs to call a timeout, we just need to call a timeout and address it. Like, that to me is super key. Key, because you want that table to be a safe place, because we're all here to have fun. We're all here to have a good time, Yeah,
and it kind of just comes right back to that trust. Like, when you got the trust at your table, don't break it. Like, talk things out. Like, those are communication. Yeah. Like I've said it a bunch before, but our hobby is 90% communication. Talk to your players. Yeah. Make sure everybody's cool with all the stuff going on at the table. Like, I 100% agree.
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
Well, Lon, we have covered a ton of ground, man, and I cannot tell you how grateful I cannot tell you how grateful I am to have you on the show, to kind of showcase all of your knowledge and experience and wisdom. I think it'll really resonate with folks. You're a terrific DM. I've been in several of your games now. It's always a super fun experience. I'm a little bit jealous of your players who get to sit around the blue table and experience the full theatrical production. You're just an awesome fella in our hobby. You've been a longtime member and I think fan of ICRPG, which, as you know, has a special place in my heart. So I'm super glad about that. And man, I couldn't be more thrilled to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
Yes,
thank you guys for having me and lavishing all this attention on me, making me feel a little somebody today.
Well, that's the whole purpose of our channel.
Yeah,
a little bit of DM advice and a little bit of showcasing cool members of our community, man. And so thanks so much.
Well, I'm hoping that one day we can all sit at a real table, and I'll bring some blue felt and put down, and we'll make that work. Now that the COVID realities have shifted a little bit, I'm definitely keeping my eye out for, when's the right opportunity that I can make it to a con and chuck some dice with you guys and the rest of the Shield Wall.
Awesome, man.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, guys, I think that's about all the time we have for today. We're super grateful if you joined us for Lon. Please check him out on his website. Please, he's on Amazon too. You can buy his products. Like, please go support him. And Joe, take us out.
Yeah, I guess again, my own private thanks for being with us. But as we've come to that time of the show, it's dangerous to go alone. So take my hero coin and always roll ultimate.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.